All right, guys. Hopefully everybody is back with us. I hope you guys had a nice little refresher break, got something to drink. We're going to continue our scheduled program. And it is time for us to introduce our beloved Hovnan Derderian. So that being said, we'd like to introduce the Primate of the Armenian Apostolic Church of the Western Diocese of North America, His Eminence Archbishop Hovnan Derderian. With his untiring leadership, pioneering vision, and constant fatherly care, he is the driving force behind the increasingly growing, evolving, and unwavering mission of the Western Diocese of the Armenian Apostolic Church. With his guidance, direction, and unceasing support, he continues to breathe life into the diocese, its faithful, and countless generations to come. He's an inspiration for all of us. He's our beloved leader. Sirpazan Hayr, we thank you and we welcome you.
Thank you, dear Deacon Dikran. You embarrassed me with all these titles that you have extended to me. When we were about to begin this conference, I told their Vazken, when it's time to introduce me, just tell the people he is one of our youth. That would be sufficient. And I truly feel that way, that I'm part of the youth family here in the Western Diocese, as it has been in the Canadian Diocese for 19 years there, and it will continue to be so. Now, the title of this conference is Reclaiming Faith in a Post-Pandemic World. And unlike my previous speakers who had specific topics like Father Vazken, faith in a post-pandemic era, Dr. Herat Chilingirian, entering into the womb of the earth, a theological reflection on death and life, my presentation will be a rather personal testimonial of faith during pandemic. How did I live my faith? And I want to share very sincerely the way I have felt, the way I have continued my journey of faith with God, and what I wanted also to share with my faithful. The pandemic, to me personally, has been the mirror to see my inner self. I say this with the very thought that we were not different prior to the pandemic, even though circumstances were favorable to exercise our Christian faith life. Yet the pandemic has turned to be a time of solitude, the time in the desert, I would say, and the blessing for the renewal of our Christian faith, the challenge to reclaim our identity, the Christian identity. I personally have dedicated my entire year to solitude, spiritual readings, and meditations, which obviously gave birth to many books, articles, and audio recorded messages, which obviously reflect my inner soul. And I can proudly share with you all that my faith grew stronger and I was able to continue my journey with God. And one fascinating experience, which I also would like to share with you before I continue, that the whole year, starting March 10th, actually, last year, it was exceptional in my pastoral life that I did not board a plane. This is an experience which I also share with you. And I never felt that, this can happen to me personally, but I'm very happy that it happened because I found other things which have instilled in my spirituality the divine strength and the wisdom and the love which we ought to share with people and the faithful of our church. What I will share with my audience, with you all today, are two booklets entitled Walking Out of the Upper Room, which clearly reflect my journey during the pandemic. These booklets were posted and will be reposted once again in our newly published newsletter, which can be downloaded for review for you to read it. However, before I present to you my talk, I will read few of the topics which in many ways embody my thoughts and beliefs as to how we can all respond in challenging times such as the pandemic. I will be reading only a few of the titles, which will also give you an impression that what I felt, how I have communicated with my people, and how these days, the pandemic period, has positively also affected my life, my spiritual life, like days of spiritual stimulus in our faith life, the accessible church. Live stream church services have turned our homes into living churches, out of sight but present in mind. God, the destiny of our lives. Remember the marvels the Lord has done. The upper room, a Zoom call with God, the church after the pandemic. God will embrace you. A lighthouse in the tempest of the world, the search of miracles, wrestling with God, religion and virtues. You must love yourself, but never be in love with yourself. So these were all the titles and numerous other titles, which I think in many ways have been my response to the pandemic, that I can never ever give up and be weaker in my faith life. And truly, as I share with you my thoughts, I can tell you very sincerely that the entire year, starting March 10th, when I landed in Los Angeles last year, to this day, the one full year that I have stayed in Los Angeles, and mostly in Burbank, very few travels, but never ever wasted my time, not even a second, with writings, with spiritual readings, with prayer life, with my faithful. I was able to fulfill what was expected from a servant of Christ. Now I'm going to read this small and short, presentation which I have written for you. But before I do that, I also would like to share with you one statement. As I was about to write this message to you, I spoke to one of our media department representatives, staff members, as to how should I title my message. He said it in simple words: as vaccines are becoming more widely available, spiritual vaccine is the preservation of our Christian identity. I say this because the title of my message was given by Father Vazken, Reclaiming Our Identity. So in a way, directly or indirectly, most of my thoughts will be dedicated about identity, how important it is to have identity, the Christian identity, in our God-given lives, in our everyday life. And having reviewed my reflections in the two booklets. I will summarize all of them in this presentation, in this message, which will illustrate the way I foresee as to why and how we can all reclaim our Christian identity, faith, the new vision for the new world in a post-pandemic world. Reclaiming our identity. The key question and concern, which certainly challenges the new generation. In an evolving world where science is progressing at an astronomical rate, some people may think that the influence of religion is diminishing. I personally disagree with the notion that science undermines the authority of religion or lessens the importance of faith as the basis of our spiritual identity. For us practicing Christians, science becomes only a contributing factor to deepen our faith in God and to be able to see the complexity of the universe and the miracle of the creation. Reclaiming Christian identity is vital in the life of an individual to honor God and the beauty of the gift of creation graced upon us all. People who do not make the inner search of their spirituality, the very presence of God, will soon disconnect themselves from humanity. Our faith in God leads us closer to humanity and cultivates within us the spirit of the Christian faith and its relevance in everyday life. For us Armenians, Christianity has been an inseparable part of our identity, shaping our essence throughout centuries. For it is through the Christian faith that we have been able to develop culture, the love for the motherland, and acquire countless other gifts, the greatest of them all being the Armenian Church. It is for this very reason that the Armenian Church is the mother of all institutions and the educator of the children of our nation. Our Christian faith has empowered Saint Mesrop to invent the Armenian alphabet, which had the ultimate purpose of the translation, the Holy Bible. The same resolute faith has inspired Saint Vartan and heroes of past centuries to pledge their undying love for Christ, our Lord. Our Christian identity unites us all as one inseparable body. Through our ancestral Christian faith, we are all pilgrims journeying in lifelong quest to embrace the presence of God. Our journey, however, will never be a peaceful one if we ever wish to uphold our Christian identity. The spiritual identity is the backbone and support system which comes to rescue our souls every time we stumble or become frail due to temptations. Without spiritual identity, we cannot surmount the difficulties which plague society. For an Armenian, reclaiming the Christian identity ought to be a travel through time. Let us revisit the Saint Nerses Shturali, the Naregs, the Datevatsis, whose lives have been living examples of a journey with Christ. Additionally, we have had countless martyrs and most recently, young soldiers carrying on the legacy of Saint Vartan and sacrificing their lives to preserve our ancestral Christian faith. These heroic pages of Armenian history ought to be part and parcel of the formation process of our spiritual identity. In a changing world, the relevance of our Christian identity should never be questioned. How then do we armor our spiritual identity? By reading and studying the Bible, by attending church, by abiding by the sacred traditions of the church, by praying as a family, and by setting an example with our noble character and God-pleasing deeds. Remember, Christianity is not a philosophy. Christianity is a lifestyle yielding the fruits of the Spirit, namely love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. The identity is the moral compass of our lives, comprised of constant values that cannot be threatened by trends, ideologies, which may be imposed upon us by society. Isms come and go, whereas Christian values stand the test of time. Fear not, for we have Christ and his teachings to lead and guide us. Do not succumb to peer pressure or conform yourselves to popular movements. Instead, find power and strength in your identity. You possess the vision of Saint Gregory the Illuminator, the spirit of Saint Vartan, the wisdom of Saint Gregory of Nare. Before I make the closure of my presentation, I would like to read only a few passages from the reflections which are published in the two booklets entitled Walking Out of the Upper Room. One passage, which is entitled a reflection, Days of Spiritual Stimulus in Our Faith Life. As I was listening to the CNN or Fox News, when I heard that the House has declared, that there will be a stimulus package, I said, do we need that? What is more effective and more important is the spiritual stimulus in our faith life during the pandemic. And I wrote this passage. I can certainly tell that all we are experiencing is a time of transformation in every sense. The whole world has been challenged by the spread of coronavirus. The shutting down of almost every place, including houses of prayer and worship, brings us all closer to God. I would sincerely say that the days are crazy for the people of the world. As all people, I too struggle to stay focused to make sure that I have not deviated from my path to fulfill the mission to serve God and my people. And truly, God leads us all to turn these days into a time of spiritual stimulus in our faith life. This is a time of spiritual transformation, a time to grow in God, to value the precious gift of life, and render respect for humanity and care for the creation. Undoubtedly, once all the turmoil settles down, we can no longer adapt the old ways of life behavior. This is one passage. Another one, I spoke about the accessible church. As the churches and worship houses were shut down, I thought to myself, how can we make the church accessible? And these are the words which I have written at the time. In a matter of few days and weeks, the whole world has changed and humanity is now almost accustomed to a pattern of new life. We all are adopting to new measures of lifestyle, social distancing. However, the vision of the church's mission is relived in new methods, and the pastors are looking for ways to introduce the accessible church in the spirituality of humanity. We have often heard the saying, where there is a will, there is a way. And I quoted then Catholicos Carekin I of blessed memory, who has given us a new vision of this statement, where there is a will, there are thousands of ways. And that's exactly what has happened. We made the church accessible for all people who are staying at home. I also have another reflection, which is entitled, Live stream church services have turned our homes into living churches. I wanted to share some of the reflections with you, just to show that I found the inner strength within me to battle the pandemic and stay firm and strong in my Christian faith, but not only firm and strong in my Christian faith, but also to inspire my people, the faithful, that I have spent 1 full year not being away from the diocese and the cathedral, yet being close to my people through the live streaming of the messages and the badarats. Another one that I have entitled is social distancing. I would say it is only physical distancing. This was another one. And then there's another one titled God, the Destiny of Our Lives, which I believe very firmly, which has grown in my spirituality as a child and to this day, and it will always stay with me. I made a quotation from Pope Francis, where he speaks about God during the pandemic, and this is the statement that he has given to us through his messages: with God, life never dies. And I made this reflection. As Christians, we need to grasp the truth. With God, life never dies. Life dies when our faith no longer is the inner movement of our spirituality. We ought to live a life imitating Christ, for Christ refused the notion of dying and trampled over death. His resurrection turned into the doorway of new life, a life continued in God. And our entire life is the journey of pandemic. How do we respond to the countless viruses surrounding our everyday life? Thus, if we are wise and strong in our faith life as true Christians, we will turn our lives into an everlasting journey. I think this will be sufficient, to share with you only some of the reflections which I have, and I will make my closing remarks to thank immensely first our visionary Father Vazken Movsesian, the architect of the Reclaim mission movement in the Western Diocese. I thank you wholeheartedly there, Vazken. This is the passion of your heart. You have always believed that revolution is important in the life of the church. And you are the master of revolution, the spiritual revolution. You know how to make it, you know how to organize it, and you know how to instill in the hearts of our youth. And your inspirational pastoral approach has certainly instilled a new spirit in the lives of our youth and has challenged us all to live a creative life with the undying Christian love and hope. My unwavering love and respect first to Dr. Chilingirian for his presentation, the message that he has given to us all. I have followed your words, dear Dr. Chilingirian, my dear brother in Christ, and one part which also has touched my heart when you said that pain is vital for the loss of our beloved ones. And I believe in that, because if you have pain, that shows your love for your beloved one. That connection is reflected in pain. And I think people who are joining here today and people who will be joining or reading, the recorded messages of this conference will certainly reread your presentation, and it will give them spiritual comfort and the richness of spirituality. I thank you personally and on behalf of all those who are participating this conference today, and we wish to have you back with us for many other occasions, as you have been, as you are now with us, and for you to be with us for many other occasions. I also would like to extend my gratitude to all panelists who will be joining us later on, and people who have helped Father Vazken for the success of this conference. What I want to say, that all people who have been registered and who are participants of this conference, I consider them all apostles of Christ and ambassadors of the Armenian Apostolic Church. We vow that together we will make our church l'Église vivante, the living church. Amen. If there are questions, I will try to respond.
Thank you so much, Sireli Sirfazan Hayr, for your wonderful message. I'm reading all of the messages coming in. Everybody is full of gratitude, and just very, very happy, and just thanking you and sending you their heartfelt thank yous. I think Deacon Mike is gonna take care of any questions that come up.
Just to let you know that these two booklets which I have published already, walking out of the upper room. I say the upper room because I felt that this pandemic has been like the upper room in our life, like the apostles who had the upper room after the resurrection of Christ our Lord. So the upper room should be for us all the time of the spiritual rebirth, the regaining and reclaiming our Christian faith. And I will be sharing these two booklets once again in our newsletter, and will be posted on our website. People can download it, and each of the reflections certainly in many ways interpret my faith life.
Another question. One more back. They asked, would you recommend any of the resources that you used in the past year for them to use?
I thank you for the question. What I'm doing recently, I'm making presentation of 10 books, actually 9 books actually, which have been part of my spiritual readings. And I have started a series of book presentations, the books which I have been reading the past 1 year. There's a book corner created by the media department. What you will see there, the actual articles that I have written, and then the presentation of the books in Armenian. So the articles are in English and the actual presentations in Armenian. So I can accommodate, both groups, people who are reading the Armenian and people who are reading in English. I believe these books can also be a source of spiritual fulfillment for people who wish to take them and read them. Amongst them, I had Pope Francis's recent publication. I had also his All Holiness Bartholomew's, biography book. I also had Henry Nouwen's, book about love. I also had a book entitled God is Not a Christian by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Some of the books were really at least the titles were challenging, but of course, these are all books which should be read, are by prominent church leaders. And amongst them, I also had Khalil Gibran, the Prophet, which actually next week will be posted in the newsletter and the website. And the last 2 sessions will be dedicated to His Holiness Vazken I of his blessed memory. It's another very important book which was published on the occasion of his 70th anniversary. I recommend that you go to the website and look at the titles which I have presented, and hopefully they will be a source of inspiration for all of you. Yes. So,
Maybe Sir Hovnan can elaborate on the ways follow his reflective practices even after the pandemic, so we don't forget we need that upper room time?
Well, it's a good question because the human person tends to forget the pandemic. Pandemics have happened throughout history, and people have forgot about it. And pandemic has happened once again. This time, the entire world was challenged. I do hope that people will not forget, what we have gone through. I believe that pandemic, even though has been a challenge for the entire world, but in many ways, to me personally, has been a blessing um, to, to make the inner journey into my soul, being in solitude, having lived a disciplined life. I did live a very, very disciplined life. I had a very specific schedule, and the only places that I have visited, um, mostly my mother and my family. Other than that, every morning, starting 8:30 to 8 p.m. sometimes or later at the diocese, and very few visitations. Most of my days were filled with readings, spiritual readings, writings, and meditations, and it will continue. What I have chosen recently, which will end the reading of the book for another time, reading of the Naregatsi, and hopefully after Easter, what I have done, the 10 books which I have presented, virtually, um, for the people to have accessibility. Um, this time, I will make a presentation of Naregatsi, maybe in 3, 5, or 10 sessions, because as I'm reading, the prayers of Naregatsi, I feel that you need, 1,000 years, to be able to share the depth of the spirituality that he has lived. But I will make a summary of all, and with the thought and with the expectation that we all uh, choose Naregatsi as a companion, uh, as a daily companion in our prayer for life. And not only companion, but also as a very precious gift, which would help us to make the inner search into our spirituality, to look for God and to stand in the presence of God.
The second question is, if you're walking through the desert right now, what have you done personally to guide yourself through Christ as we're tested, and what do you recommend for us?
Well, if you are referring to, literally to the desert, I would say that where we live is the desert too. When we walk, amongst people, you need to feel like in the desert. Uh, you need to feel that you are tempted by people. You need to feel that, you're about to make a mistake. Um, Therefore, every step that you take in the desert of life, I should say, has to be filled with prayer, has to be lived with God. I have made a reflection where I speak about making God the destiny of our lives. That thought has to stay with you minute by minute. And I know every other minute we fail and we make mistakes, but the other minute will at least be a journey with God, continuing the journey of God. So nothing difficult, I should say. Just open up your heart, uplift your prayers to God, and just surrender into the hands of God, and the rest will be done. I believe. That's my belief.
Thank you so much, Sirpazan Hajj, for answering those questions for us. Um, I believe those were it. If we don't have any more questions, we're gonna take a break until 11:55. Please don't disconnect your Zooms. That way you don't have to try to reconnect again. So keep your Zooms on. Let's meet back at 11:55 because at noon sharp, we're gonna start the second half of our conference, and we have a lot of exciting stuff planned. We have 3 panel discussions with the youth of the Armenian Church. One of the discussions is faith in post-pandemic times. The other one is faith in action, our response to the humanitarian crisis caused by the war in Artsakh. And finally, a wrap-up discussion talking about everything we have learned and gathered. So we have a lot of exciting things coming, and please join us at 11:55 a.m. so we can start the second half, and Deacon Levon Barserian is going to go ahead and moderate and MC the second half. We're looking forward to seeing you guys very, very shortly. Thank you.